And I am done. So I just got finished reading Fool's Assassin by Robin Hobb. This is, I believe, the 14th book in the realm of the Elderlings series, and the first in one of the sub-series, which is called The Fitz and the Fool. This is the fifth and final sub-series in the overall, and it's going to be a trilogy. And oh, baby, did I love this book. This is a 5 out of 5. It's the best book that I read this month. I am in love with this book. And Robin Hobb is just going down as one of the greatest fantasy authors of all time for me. Everything that makes a fantasy book great was ramped up to 11 in this book for me. I've said for a long time that I think that Robin Hobb is amazing. And I couldn't feel more of that feeling after reading this book. Her books, the first book in each of her series, kind of have a familiar style, and that they go very slow. She wants to build up this story for you and tell you about the characters, and in really laying that groundwork. And that's evident here. This is the best of the initial book in any of the series for me. And I suspect that this is probably a common theme among a lot of readers. I don't like to read anything about my fantasy books before I go into them. But I bet if I'm reading the reviews that people are going to agree with that statement. Because it feels like she's really matured as an author. Even though I really loved the first books in this series, it's just so beautiful. And it makes you feel so warm inside. I mean, I think part of the reason that this book is so impactful to me is this journey that you feel like you've gone on with this main character, Fitz. And, you know, there's been a lot of books in this series, but there's only been 6 books in the Fitz universe. This is the 7th. But it's done this amazing thing that I've never read about in a fantasy book, where these books have very large time jumps, not just in between the series, but even in the books themselves. It kind of effortlessly tells you that years are going by. And the first book is dealing with a child. I mean, Fitz is a very small boy in the beginning of that first book. And by now, he's an older man. And due to some magical reasons that are evident in previous books, so I'm not spoiling anything, he looks younger than he is, but he still is an older guy. And so you've got to go through this lifelong journey with this character and other characters in the series that are here as well. That it just feels like this epic that at a scale that I've never been through before. And the character growth that happens from somebody who starts as clueless about the world around them, and going to this somebody who is he's mature, he's gone through loss and pain, and he's tried to overcome that. And it's just a beautiful thing to read, and I've never gone through it before. You know, talking about the plot is going to be difficult in this book because I don't want to ruin anything, and these are non-spoiler reviews. But there's a couple pivotal moments that happened in this book around the 25% mark that change the entire scope of the book into a totally different story. And so I can't really talk about anything that happened in the last 3/4 of this book in any sort of detail without ruining those moments that you really need to read, because they're so impactful and heartfelt and make this book the amazing book that it is. But needless to say, I loved the plot in this book. It's slow. It's very slow. It might be the slowest of the first books in the series, but it doesn't feel like a slog. I flew through this book in a few days, and it's a pretty lengthy book. And it's just so cool to watch an author being able to pull this off. This slow, methodical story that also can get your heart pumping in sections. And you get just so invested in these characters. I mean, speaking of characters, and I don't want to ruin anything, but there are new characters in this book. And that's true for all of these books in this series. You're always going to get new characters at the beginning. But the new characters, one in particular, and I won't say anything about who this person is, you instantly fall in love with this character. Everybody will. And you want to defend this character. You see things from a different perspective. And for the first time in the Fitz stories, it actually shows a different point of view. You get to go through this other character's eyes for significant portions of this book. And it's a beautiful storytelling device that's certainly used in a ton of other fantasy books, most other fantasy books, but has never been done here. And you get to see Fitz from a different perspective for the first time through somebody else's eyes. And you get to see him for the fallible person that he is. Even though we love him, he makes a lot of mistakes. And I won't say anything more than that, but I love that we finally get to see this other side of him. And you get to learn about this new character. And they're truly a wonderful, wonderful person that I couldn't say more positive things about. And every time I got to one of their chapters, I was even more eager to read it than the Fitz chapters. The world that has been built here in the realm of the Elderlings is a very grand scale. You get to go through different continents that look wildly different from each other, with different cultures. They feel living and breathing. In this book, however, it really only centers around 3 spots. One of them, you get to spend about probably 85 to 90% of the book in this one location. And it's not even like they go a lot of places. They stay in one spot in this one location. So the world building has already been done. It doesn't need to be done anymore. We understand what the world is and what it feels like. And it was kind of a refreshing take on things because you got to learn a lot stronger on the character side of things than normal. And Robin Hobb is the greatest character fantasy writer of all time, in my opinion. I don't know how anybody can ever be better than her. They're so compelling, and even though you might dislike a character, you very much see things from their perspective, can understand their motivations, and that's the mark of a wonderful storyteller. The pacing in this book is great. Even though it goes slow, you get these moments of faster action, and it leads towards, you don't really know where the story's going for a lot of it, but you're there in the journey. But the last quarter of the book, things really ramp up, and you start to really piece it together on the story that it's trying to tell. And by the end of it, it's almost a little bit of a cliffhanger, which I don't love. But the fact that these books are already out means the cliffhanger is meaningless, because I could just pick up the next book and start right away. But the last quarter of this book are intense, and it's not so much like these world-changing events, planets colliding, but they're intense for those characters, and I love it for that. The magic in this book is better than any of the other books, and not because the magic is different. I've criticized the magic system in the past as my least favorite part of the previous books, because there's 2 main magics that people use, and most people in these books can do none of them, but almost nobody can do both of them except for Fitz. And one of them is kind of like beast magic, and that you can connect with animals and hear their thoughts, but in particular you can connect with one of them, and they become like a bonded character that goes through life with you. And the other power is called the skill, and it's something where characters can communicate via their minds over long distances with somebody else that has the skill. And these while they were fleshed out, it wasn't like super inventive, and it was very limited in the scope of what they were. But in this book, they don't change, but one of the characters interacts in these magic systems in a totally different way. And they're learning about the magic system as you're going along in this book. And it's super fun to see from somebody that doesn't know about these things, has never had education in these things, and is interacting with them in a different way than really anybody has before. And it's really fun to go through. I don't really have much more to say other than I am in love with this book. It's one of the best books I've read this year. And it's making me so excited to go into this next book. It's probably going to be about a month before I get to it, because I read many series at the same time, and I space them all out. But I can't wait. If the next book is anything like this one, then this series might be my favorite Realm of the Elderlings sub-series, which is impressive, because I gave all of the Live Ship Traders books 5 out of 5s, and it's one of my favorite trilogies of all time. And just briefly looking at the Goodreads scores, they get better. And I typically agree with that. I don't always agree with my rating of a score on Goodreads, but I do generally agree if things get better or worse compared to the previous books. So I'm jazzed. If you haven't read this series yet, get to it. I know that the previous one, the Rainwild Chronicles, the one that came right before this, what is the weakest of them. So if you've lost a little motivation, you're thinking like, maybe Robin Hobb's lost it. No, she's at her peak in this book. If you have not read any Realm of the Elderlings books yet, I urge you to go pick up Assassin's Apprentice and start this journey. So that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.